Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
What in the hell? What the hell? I hope my video. I hope this camera's picking this shit up. What the hell?
And we're back with a first-time guest here on the show, and she goes by the handle Iron Dogger. And if you look at the map behind her, that's because of the Iron Dog, which is kind of like an Iditarod, except only with like snowmobiles and goes way further. As you may be able to see, depending on the screen in the background, 2,031 miles. And that checkpoint map, that's where you have to actually check in. There's kind of like not really a designated course in between. It's just like however fast you could get there, but here's your check-in points. So that whole thing is completely crazy. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about some of the strange Bigfoot-related things that happened to her before that actually came into being. And with that, welcome Jackie Iron Dogger to the show.
Thank you. How are you doing tonight? Good to be here.
Great to have you here. I've been trying to get you on for quite a while, and we had a chance to talk the other night and actually got to hear some of your stories and stuff. And, you know, they're just about as riveting as I would expect from somebody that'll drive a snowmobile across open ocean with krakens trying to grab them.
That's the fun part of living in Alaska.
Sure. Every day is an adventure, a fight for survival.
That's right.
And that's a calm day.
Yeah. If the animals aren't trying to kill you, the state will.
The weather is trying to kill you. Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back to your first incident. When was that, and what was going on?
I'd say like my first incident was when I was probably around 12, about 12, 13 years old, and there was a group of us that we were walking out after like an event at school, and there was a few of them that didn't want to walk alone through the trails. And back then, this was like in the early 80s of Anchorage. There was the Campbell Creek trails. They're still there.
So Anchorage was a lot smaller than it is now.
Yes, much. much. We still had a lot of dirt roads, things like that. So much different than how big it is today as well. And so we were walking through the trails, and it was late, and it was in past fall, so it would get dark at night. And as we were walking through the trails, we could hear something tracking us. And every step we'd take, it was like stepping in step with us, and we'd stop, it would stop. And I, was trying to talk to the rest of them, like, don't run, please, whatever you do, do not run. We don't want to become prey at this point. And so I was trying to figure out what it was as we were walking down the trail. And it didn't make sense to me, because if it was a bear, we would have seen it by then. Like, and bears really don't do that. They'll follow you for a little bit, but they'll generally make themselves known. A moose, they definitely don't follow you like that and track you and sit there and meet your steps and stop when you stop. And, it was just really weird. And so by the time we got to the end of the trail, they were trying to convince us not to go back down. And, we were just sitting there chatting, saying everything's fine. And then all of a sudden you could see on the look of their faces, there's something behind us. And we turn around, and something was standing out on the trail. And it had, like, now I know, like an arm out like this. But at then I was looking at it, and it, like, my brain was trying to decipher what I'm looking at. And it was so massive. Like, first my head was thinking, well, maybe it's a moose and it's just positioned weird, because the body mass was so high up. It definitely wasn't a bear, because it's bears, when they stand up, they've got stumpy legs, and they definitely can't do this with their arms to the side.
Right.
So that was ruled out really fast, and they have ears on their head. Like, there's a lot of distinctual things with a bear.
So you're thinking maybe it's like one of the moose's antlers at a weird angle or something.
Yeah.
And then when you look at a little more, it's like, well, that's not it.
Yeah, because then it was like, well, it would only have one antler, because there was stuff dangling too. So, I thought, well, maybe it broke its antler running around. And I thought, well, no. And then as I was still trying to process everything, the hand came down to its side and the feet went ankle to ankle. And I was like, there is no animal that can do that. And we all just split. And my friend and I, we ended up having to go an extra 5 miles around to get back home, because we went like, we were not going anywhere near that trail, nowhere near it, and that was.
Well, that must have taken some extra time to get back home then.
Oh yeah. But we were not messing with whatever was on the trail.
Well, did you report it to the adults when you got home? No.
Yeah, but it was just blown off that there was just someone on the trail following us. That we were lucky to have gotten away. It's like it was.
No, it's probably just an Alaskan bush stalker. Don't worry about it.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
So, things like that, you just kind of, shove off, whatever. You forget about it over time.
Did you talk to your friend that was with you about it afterwards ever?
Oh yeah. Like, when it all really, because when all of these experiences happened, I never, ever considered Bigfoot. Never. Even though I had heard about Bigfoot growing up, I'd watched all the shows, things like that. It just, it wasn't that I didn't believe in Bigfoot. I'd figured it existed. It wasn't a question of mine, but I'd never put it together, which is so weird to me. I find that weird. I find it really weird.
Well, yeah, there's that cognitive dissonance and that disconnect.
Yeah, it's complete disconnect, because I just, never put the two together. And it wasn't until I was having chemo and watching, YouTube videos and listening to Survivor Man, and he talked about his incident in Alaska and how he thought it was a Bigfoot. And that's when I went, wait a minute. wait a minute. And then all of a sudden it just kind of like all of these different memories just came flooding back. And I mean, I was like, Dad, because my dad was with me during my chemo. He never left my side. And I was like, you're not going to believe this. And he was just like, okay. Those are some good chemo drugs. Yeah. And so, but that's how I kind of put it together. And then I called Stephanie, which was my friend, and that because we still remained in contact. And I contacted her and I said, do you know what was on the trip? Do you remember that time? And she was like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't forget it. And she was like,
Well,
do
you
you
got
know
to
what
tell
that
everybody else
was?
about that time before you tell the part with Stephanie.
Well, where we walked on the trail.
Yeah.
And I asked her, I said, well, do you remember that? She said, oh, yeah. I said, well, do you know what that was? And she was like, you know what that was. I'm like, why didn't anybody point that out? Like, yeah. She
That was
just
only how
laughed.
long ago?
Yeah, forever.
Thanks for mentioning that. I
Yeah.
was told that was just a weird stalker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was pretty funny. Just looking back over time, just, being completely oblivious.
Well, you got to be oblivious one more time after that, though, right?
Quite a few times. I mean,
Okay.
there's been quite a few incidents, but there's been like a few that really stick out that I would more consider, like one night out on the Deshka River, and this is we're out on the Matsu, and the Deshka was further down. And at that time, I was all by myself on this island, and that's where the base camp was kind of set. And so it was just me and my dog, and I had just a little John boat, skiff. And so I was sitting there listening, to the fire and just hanging out with my dog, and I could hear what sounded like some people talking, and I couldn't quite make out what they were saying, and they were across the river. And so, a little bit entertained, I was kind of trying to listen, and they were whistling and making all sorts of noise, and it almost sounded like they were Russian maybe, or speaking in a native language, because I couldn't, like, I could tell they were talking, but I could not figure, like, none of the words made any sense. So, it just was, it did sound like people talking though. And so I, was trying to strain, and then, I thought they've got to be drunk, because there's no way they're over there. where I was on that island and across the river there to get to that spot, like, you couldn't just walk to that spot unless you'd, brought a boat to that area and gotten off and then tried. It was just such horrible terrain, and like, there's no cabins there, there's nothing there. And, it's really just gnarly. We call them snatch alders, but like, the alders are just really gnarled up in there. It's hard to get through. You do
Yeah.
serious bushwhacking to try and even get through it. And so I'm listening, like, that's where they were. So it really piqued my attention at that point, because it's like, well, how would they get there? And they're going to need help. That was like, after you start deducing like things, it's like, they're going to need help. They're going to need to be rescued, because where they were, and it sounded like they were drunk, obviously, because they're there and they're making a whole lot of racket. And, and just the way that they were whistling and carrying on just really loud. It was like, it didn't make any sense. And, so it was like, whatever. And I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I hear, like, it's like this horrible scream. Horrible scream. It is like, I watch a lot of horror movies, and the famous female scream. It is like that, but much more intense and just horrifying.
Mhm.
And so I jump up, and I grabbed, the tether for the boat, my mag light, and I had a casul, grab the casul, and I go running over to the boat because I'm figuring by now they need help. So I jump on the boat, and it's dark, and the Matsu River isn't something you want to navigate at night. And so I scream across the river, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And it was just silence. There's this weird, eerie silence. And like that scream, like kind of penetrates through your chest. Like it was rough. And it was just like so eerily quiet. And I remember like standing there, and my dog all of a sudden just bailed out of the boat and went up to went up back towards the campfire. And I thought, well, that's weird, and I'm just sitting there like, whoa. And there was nothing. Like it just went dead silent. And I thought, okay, this is really weird. So I went back up to the campfire, and I just kind of sat there for a minute debating what to do. And as I was sitting there, like I never heard anything again, which I thought, okay, that's weird, And so after a while, I somewhat got more comfortable again, you kind of, and I could hear something coming across the river. And I went, oh, shit.
Uh-oh.
Whatever they got it, whatever they were doing over there, they're sending a bear or a moose back my direction. Like that's the first thing that came to mind, was like, whatever is coming across the river is getting away from whatever was going on over there. And so I'm waiting and listening, because when moose come out of the river, you can kind of like not really figure out what it is, but get a good idea between a moose or a bear. And as it came out of the water, I can hear it, like the water dripping off of it. And it was massive. Like I knew whatever came out of that water was massive. But I could not tell what it was. Like I could not tell what it was. And that was really weird. And so as I was sitting there, just kind of like, okay, this is weird. My dog got, was really anxious. And you could hear whatever it was make its way like around the island. It never came really close, but it was like making its way around the perimeter of where the way that the camp was set up, like the main cooking area, and that like the fire pit was one area, and then where the actual sleeping tents were off in the trees. And so I just got really uncomfortable for a while there and thought, okay, I'm just going to go get my tent. Like, I don't know why, but tent somehow provide you comfort in the woods.
Everything
it's weird.
From Godzilla, nuclear blast, alien assault, anything. If you're in your tent, you're all good.
Yeah, if I can't see it, it can't see me, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's where I went. And, back then, the tent that I had was Gary King's, was an outdoor fitter in Alaska at that time. They're no longer there, but they had their own tent, and it was a double Kevlar tent. And so it had blackout, and it was really thick tent. So, and it was double. So
nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. And so I got into the tent, and my dog's in the tent with me. And as we snuggle in, my dog all of a sudden just goes shoop all the way to the bottom of my bag. Like he was like, I'm getting in with you, and went to the bottom of my bag. And you could hear whatever it was, as it's making its way over towards the tent. My dog was having none of that. And I was just like, okay, this is getting real. Like, usually animals will leave you alone for the most part. And so to be bothered like this was like, okay, this is a predator. It's coming closer, because moose they're not nosy like that. And so I just, got my casul out and thought, okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to be dealing with a bear is what I was figuring at that point. And I could not make out what it was. I seriously could not make out what it was. And you could hear it come closer and closer. And this isn't light, like it was heavy. And so I'm laying there, and I remember thinking, okay, I've got to decide my escape. Because if this thing comes, because I could hear where it's coming, and I'm like, well, I can't go out the front. So, what am I going to do? Am I going to have to cut out? It's not going to just cut through the tent. You've got 2 whole Kevlar layers to go. It's like, you're not just going to escape this thing, and it's not going to just get in either. So there's kind of like this dual barrier system, that's a little bit more protection than just your average tent. And so I had that going for me, and I knew that. And so I was just waiting, and I could hear whatever it was press up against that outer layer of the tent. And I thought, oh shit, here we go. And I figured if it flexes in, and I'm waiting for this whole thing to just start flexing in. And that's when I was starting, like, I'm going to just have to shoot. I'm going to have to shoot through the tent, and your mind is just going through all of the different scenarios you're going to have to deal with if this is going down. And so as I'm just dealing with this situation, the next thing I know, I hear the boat motor coming. And this is during king salmon season. The people that I was with was a guide, and they do not leave the fishing hole. Like, that was whole key to being out there overnight, was sleeping on the fishing hole.
Right.
And so here it came, and I thought, oh shit, something's wrong. Like, something was really wrong. And so I get out, I still had my gun right there. I had never, like, it hadn't moved, but whatever took place from me, that point of time had elapsed. And I would not have gone to sleep with a casoul on my chest. Casouls don't have a safety. The safety is the hammer. Like, you cock that hammer back, it's game over. Like, there's no safety on it. So I've been raised, out in the Alaskan woods with my dad, who was in the Navy, and he would have never, he taught me very well gun safety. So that wouldn't have been something I would ever do consciously, never.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened there. So I was a little rattled when when it came, like, I'm waking up and it's pure daylight out, and it's like, oh Jesus, okay, this is weird. And like, the weird thing in summer in Alaska is it could be sunny out, but if you're in the trees, like with a canopy like over you, it can be dark in there. So, and depending on what part of year, and anyhow, so as I come out, it's like, oh shit, something's going on. And whoever the group that was with them heard the screams, and they thought it was me. And they were like, we just came to check on you. We heard the screams, and the other, I told you if something happened, you'd have heard that gun. Which is, true. But yeah, so that just kind of got pushed off, and again, never would have thought Bigfoot. Never would have put the two together, ever. But there were no bear tracks around. There was, yeah. So that was another incident I look back at and go, now that was weird. The weird part about it is the grumbling and stuff. So again, once I learned about, the whole Alaska experience with Survivor Man, I started looking up Bigfoot videos and came across the Sierra sounds, and that rattled me. Like, I dropped my phone in the hospital, because it was just like, whoa, like, that is exactly what I heard across the river, pretty much. Like, it was just so similar to what I heard across the river. It just brought me right back to that moment. And when I heard that, it was like, oh, so I don't know. I can't say for sure that's what it was, but that's, again, none of these I could ever say 100%, was a Bigfoot, but it does seem to fit the narrative.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah, that's the kind of, those experiences are creepy when they come messing around with your tent at night, which has happened to me many times, and it never gets less creepy. Now, the last time we had it was at the end of September, and we were in camp, and I had my tent set up. Johnny was just going to sleep in his car. He had the seat reclined. He had his sleeping bag pulled up over him, and he had, like it covered over his head, and he's about to go to sleep, and all we hear, whoosh, whoosh, womp, womp, two gigantic footfalls right in between his car and my tent, which is like maybe 40 or 50 feet. And we both heard it. So it's like, okay, pretty much probably right in between both of us is where we were figuring where it was. So it wasn't further than 25 or so feet from my tent or his car. And those were the loudest footfalls I have ever heard. I've been right next to a draft horse running past me, not even close. Way bigger than a moose, way bigger than any of the bears in Montana. I mean, this is like Godzilla walked into camp and flopped down both of his feet extra hard on purpose, so you would hear it. I was on an air mattress, but Johnny wasn't. He had his feet on the floorboards of the car, and he said the car literally shook
Did you
each
guys
time.
look out?
I didn't. I stayed in my tent. I just turned the flashlight on. He tried to look out, and he couldn't see anything there.
Wow.
Of course, we didn't have any lights on either, but
Right.
well, yeah, that was pretty creepy. And I've had them shake my tent and, come walking right up to you. Can hear their footsteps coming right up next to the tent. There's been more than once they've done that. I wasn't even asleep. I didn't even have the tent light turned off yet. And they're already walking right up on the tent. And you're like, good God, you guys are getting brazen. What the hell, man?
Nuts. Yeah, I don't have anything anything like that. Like the craziest, I think the most
we don't usually get the vocals like what you were hearing, though. That's really rare where we're at. Mostly what we get are weird. It almost sounds like an old tree creaking in the wind.
Oh,
They do that one. And then the other one is this single note high pitched whistle. But beyond that, the only thing you ever hear maybe are whoops, and that's about it.
Interesting. Yeah, out in Talkeetna, I've heard those big long howls, those deep howls, yeah, a lot of like kids in the night, there's been so many times I've been out camping out remotely and I would hear kids and I'd think to myself, who's out here letting their kids just run around in the middle of the night? That is stupid.
Isn't it dangerous out here with the kids running around in the dark?
Yeah, if I'm in the woods, I will never, even if I'm super remote, rode my bike 14 miles down a trail, it doesn't matter how remote, had been dropped off by a plane, by boat, whatever, it doesn't matter. I have never felt like I'm the only one that could be out there ever. You know what I mean? Like I figure if I'm out here, other people could
Somebody
be
else
out here.
could be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when I hear things like that, it never, I don't know.
I gotta
now
say,
I'm a little bit more. I think I would be a whole lot more.
I've been in a couple places where the idea that there could be humans around is like pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
And one of them, we hiked up this river away from a road for 4 days, going upriver the whole time, and we're going further out into the wilderness. And on the 5th day, there was a guy coming down the opposite side of the river back in our direction.
Yeah.
Who had done the same thing. He hiked like a week up the river, went, there's nothing up there except a lot of bears. So I'm going back.
Yeah, and that's how I would spend my time off, is doing exactly that. I'd get off work, and I worked in IT, so it was, pretty intense. And so I'd get out for work and I'd just be out in the woods, as far as I could get away, as remote as possible, And then when it came time to when I got the iron dog bug, that was a whole different shift, as far as, training nonstop for that race. And that was where I had probably the most prominent experience that I can't say is anything other than would be a Bigfoot, but I don't have 100% surety, but whatever, but I'll tell the story. We
Sure,
were
I've heard
out.
it before, and it could be a giant. Maybe it
It
wasn't a
could,
Bigfoot.
you just don't know. I had someone say that it could have been someone on stilts.
Somebody that has never done any snowshoeing or walking in deep snow maybe said that.
Well, it's definitely never been in remote Alaska
Yeah.
either, in 26 below, but yeah,
Sure, why not?
that could happen. I mean, it could. Yeah. So, my training for the Iron Dog, I took very seriously. Spent 4 intense years studying everything about the race that I could. Talked to all the racers, the champions, everyone. Anybody that didn't finish the race, I asked them why, what caused them to not finish. And those were the things that I trained the hardest on. So I took all of those worst circumstances and all the circumstances that caused all the racers to not be able to finish. And that's what I trained on. And so a lot of it had to do with frostbite and dealing with really harsh, cold temperatures, because the race is done during the coldest month and in February.
Do you think that lessens the amount of outside interference from hairy man throwing boulders and stuff when you have it that time of the year?
Well, yeah. Yeah. So one particular, morning and that evening, like the evening before, I knew it was going to get cold. And so we practiced, my training partner at that time, it was my race partner. And it was like,
So
let's go.
quick question here. You're talking about middle of the winter, so what are you looking at for like average temperatures during the race? 30 below, 40 below?
The average temperatures during the race can get, like, it's been all over the board. That's the beauty of with Alaska temperatures, but
Okay.
it's usually at least 10 below, 20 below, and at the very
Okay.
minimum. And then it can, and then it gets really cold the further in the interior you go.
So you're
So
pretty much figuring that the whole race you're going to be in extreme below zero temperatures,
absolutely,
guaranteed.
yeah. Like you're gonna like you could experience, and there's been many years where the temperatures were really warm and there was hardly any snow, and they're dealing with a lot of water, a lot of overflow, things like that. So it's
Lots
just,
of puddle skipping.
yeah, a lot. And even when we did it, there was plenty. But yeah, so you just get a variety. You just don't know. That's the beauty of Alaska. You never know. If you don't like the weather, wait, it'll change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you go from one extreme to the next, especially when you consider, like, the race right now is over 2,600 miles. They've added a Kotzebue loop into it. The race just keeps getting longer
Oh,
each.
so 2,000 miles wasn't long enough.
Yeah, no, not nearly. It needs to maintain the world's longest and toughest snowmobile race, that title. And so it always makes sure and always, they also like to give the racers, a little bit more variety.
Well, who the hell is giving them a run for their money with a 2,000-mile race?
There
Where are
is
they doing this?
Canada. They have a Cane's Quest race in
Oh,
Canada.
yeah, I was
It's
wondering if it was
nothing
like,
like
oh,
the Iron Dog. Yeah,
Greenland. You have to go
the
from the
two are
north
not.
of Greenland to the southern tip and back again.
Yeah, they are not the same. But I'm not, I don't want to take anything away from any race or any event, but the Iron Dog is brutal. It is quite the extreme race.
Yeah.
And so, training for that was really intense. And my race partner at that time, she didn't end up running with me, but we went out and it was 26 below. And that was in, particular, like, we got to go. It's cold. Let's go. This is Iron Dog weather. That was,
Good
a
training
term.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we went out, and it had just, had a little light snow that previous night, So we had laid the fresh tracks out going out, and I usually ran about 200 miles was the minimum mileage I'd put on in a training run. And so we went out to the river, and on our way back, we're coming back, and we're still the only tracks, you know. So I could tell it's our tracks we're coming back on. And all of a sudden something just kind of catches my mind in my eye and my mind as I'm, going, and I kind of slow my sled down and I look, and it is a perfect footprint, like perfect. You could see the toes and like perfect. And I kind of look, and you look up and you can see the trail had come like a long way across the swamp and then got on our track and was following down our snow machine track
So it was
down through
going
the
the
swamp.
direction you had come from.
Yeah, like so.
And nobody else had been up there, just you.
No, like I said, we had laid the fresh tracks out, and we'd still our tracks coming back. And so, it was really awkward, like weird. And so I jump off my sled and I'm looking at these tracks, and the gate, like that was one thing that, like, there's a lot of things that just kind of disrupted my gears, but the gate was ski tip to track, like seriously, like the end of my track.
First step, yeah.
First per step, like each, like, so I tried running, and leaping like I was running, and I couldn't even make that. And I thought, oh my God. So my mind started thinking, this person's hypothermic. We've got a hunting, trapper out here who's gone hypothermic, and they have stripped down to nothing, and they are just running through the swamps naked. And that's what I thought. Like, that's what came to mind. Not Bigfoot, like nothing, never once did that cross my mind. And so when my partner showed up, I'm like, we got to go follow this. And so we take off, and we follow these tracks for a long time, and we're
before you guys took
out.
off to follow those tracks, did you tell her what
No,
your theory was?
No,
I just said, we got to follow
we
this.
got to go. You make a little
okay,
thing.
now I can guess what she was thinking. She was like, why does she want to follow these Bigfoot tracks?
So I'm like, let's go, right? So off we go. And I get, and I'm following it. We follow for quite a distance. We get to the edge of the tree line where the trees are so tight you can no longer sled through them. And these tracks just kind of went through them. And I'm standing there screaming, hollering, are you okay? Are you okay? Whistling, and she pulls up. And I jump off my sled right as, she's pulling up, and I sink up to my chest in snow. And this thing post-holed through this snow.
Not even dragging his feet.
No trench mark whatsoever. And my brain is like, all I'm thinking is, this person's just growing. Like, this
the hypothermia is causing gigantism.
Yeah. Now he's got gigantic legs, and I'm thinking, like, is he 7 foot tall? Like, my brain is just breaking at this point. And my partner looks at me and she's like, I am not chasing wild man through the fucking woods with you. She turns around and bails, and I am like standing there just utterly perplexed by the whole entire thing. And wild man did not sink in. Again, oblivious. So I'm just like, that's weird. I don't know. So I just kind of climb back on my sled, and I'm thinking, this is really weird. And so I go and chase her down, and I kind of like flag her, like, we're going to go and report this. Kind of like, there's a lot of signals you make when snow machining, and with a partner, you kind of interpret just basic communication. But it was like, follow me, we're going to report this kind of stuff. And she was like, no. And I was like, yes. Anyhow, so we get to the place, and at Big Lake at that point, when we finally get to where the closest town off the trail, and they had a search and rescue point at that bar. And so that's why I was like, I got to go in there and report this. This guy's going to die. And she's like, do not go in there. You're going to look like an idiot. And I'm thinking, what is wrong? Yeah, so I just, whatever. I really wasn't. Anyhow, so I get in there, and I'm like, there's 3 people sitting at the bar and the bartender working on a glass. And I'm like, hey, there's a hypothermic trapper running naked out on Trail 5. He's going to die. Like, I tried following him, but we couldn't follow him any further. And the guy like kind of cuts me off and he's like, oh, that's just Wild Man. And I am like, who is this Wild Man that no one seems to give a shit is running around naked out in 26 below out in the swamps? Like, no one seems to care about this dude. Okay. All right. We're all going to be okay with this. Okay. And I was pissed. Everybody's okay with this? All right. Okay. So for weeks, I watched the news. I followed the newspaper. I was for certain that someone was going to, say, oh, we were having a missing trapper that never came back.
Yeah.
And never once did the race partner at that time clue me in. We had a bunch of other stuff that happened. But yeah, never once. And I just.
So that whole time you're sitting there thinking there's going to be some news report from an, disgruntled housewife going, my husband left and all he took with him was a bottle of whiskey. I haven't seen him since then.
Yeah, something. A family missing their husband or dad or something, Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like a painful slap across the face. Like I said, when all of that hit, it was like, why did I never, ever yeah.
And at that point, you became Captain Oblivious.
Yes.
And you were given superhero powers.
Just don't acknowledge it and it will all go away.
Oh, it's amazing. I was telling, about the one report of the guy who was in bad shape and he was out in the woods hunting and he got chased by a bear and the bear chased him for a while until he couldn't breathe and he thought he was going to have a heart attack and he collapsed. And the bear stood there and waited for him to get up and run again. And it chased him some more until he was almost going to have a heart attack and collapse. And he fell over panting for air. And the bear stood there and waited for him for a little while more. And it growled at him so he'd get up and run again.
Because that's what bears
and
do.
You're like, don't think that was a bear, dude.
No. No.
Yeah, where else could it be?
They're not into just racing you out the trail.
Well, the bear's just having fun chasing you out of the woods. It's an enjoyable afternoon activity. They got nothing better to do. They get fed all the time.
Yeah, they just burn energy all willy-nilly.
Just run around pranking humans for the shits and giggles. That's what bears do. When they're not stealing picnic baskets anyway, that's what they're doing.
Right.
So after the big aha moment,
yeah,
the light bulb finally kicked the.
Now keep in mind I'm having chemo, so everybody around me is like, oh boy, she's cracking.
Yeah, because the drugs always make you have memories that are, even though they're absolutely real, they're somehow fake. What?
Right.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you had any kind of experiences since you've done the Iron Dogger race?
Nothing that, since I've been, after chemo and now
right.
kind of no, I haven't had anything that I would say is substantial. And trust me, I've been all eyes peeled.
Yeah, now you're paying attention.
Now I'm paying attention. I am looking again. And I've got my husband and my son very intrigued by the whole entire thing. So now they're really curious. Very skeptical of everything, but very curious nonetheless, because of my stories and stuff. They're not profound by any way, but it's not, that's not something you see every day.
Oh, hell no.
It's barefoot tracks out in the middle of nowhere.
You've had 3 more Bigfoot experiences than most people ever get to have.
There's been a lot of weird little things out, because I used to race mountain bikes, so I trained in the woods a lot, and there's been many different things happen. Like one time that really, to me, if it was a bear, again, it would have presented itself now looking back. But I was off trail, just hardcore boondocking on my mountain bike, and I came up on this one area, and I got a weird feeling, and you could hear something in the trees, and it was like, oh shit, there's something coming. And it was coming, and I kept moving. I'm not going to dismount and wait for a bear at that point. So it's like, okay, just keep your motion, and I'm looking, and I could hear whatever it is there, and it's coming, and I'm going, and I am like, my heart is up into here, and I get to this point, and it's like where, we don't have a whole lot of big trees in that part of Alaska, but there's some decent sized cottonwoods and some birches and stuff. And there was a few, that were laid over, and they were like in a grid pattern in this area. And I'm like, that's like, there was nowhere else to go. Like, it was like, oh shit. And my bike at that point was a racing bike. It's super light, like 23 pounds anyhow. So I picked that thing up, and I just hurled it over that grid like pattern, just chucked that bike, and I jumped over it and was like making my way across it. Like I could have probably crawled under it, but it was all like
tangled.
No.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to get over it, and as I'm crawling over it, I'm thinking, this is how I die. Like this is this is it. This is gonna be the moment. Like this is it. This is, because he's got me trapped. Like I'm not gonna, like, if that thing come out, that bear could come through that and come get me at any point. Like,
yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm just there. I'm on the dinner table at this point, and I am like freaking out, as trying to keep my cool as best as I could. And I get off there, grab my bike, and just shoot, lock and load again, because I lock in anyhow. And I'm back down and I am hauling ass. And it never followed me past that section.
Huh.
But I am telling you, record timing. I think I broke speed records at that point. So, oh my God. What that was, I don't know. Could have been anything.
That is so creepy.
Yeah. So I've had lots of that kind of weird little things. Like I've had a sow. I've dealt with a sow and 2 cubs. Like I've had to pull the hammer down and shoot with the casul at a sow cub. I mean, a sow with her 2 cubs, and that was terrifying. And so I've dealt with bears, I've dealt with moose, I've dealt with pretty much all the critters, the big game critters that were in that area. And, so I was well prepared to die at any moment from a bear. You know what I mean? Like
it's just kind of expected in Alaska.
You're an Alaskan.
At some point, a bear is going to kill me, but until then, I'm going to have fun and live my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can't live in absolute fear of a bear, but everywhere you go in Alaska is bear territory. I mean, it's their territory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that has always been my biggest, concern. Always was bears. I wish because now I'm all broken and I can't physically get to the places like I used to get to. Yeah. And so I wish I could. Like I have plenty of friends with planes and boats and things like that, and we've got enough equipment. Like we could get me out places, but just to get me out to some of those places, I'd be toast afterwards, Yeah. So, but it would. So we take as much advantage as we can to get out, as far as we can get me out, But I would love to get back out to some of those really, really remote. And what I mean remote is, again, you can't drive to it. You're either taking a boat, a plane, an RV, or an ATV, something else. There's no roads. So that's my idea of remote.
Your experience with mountain biking and talking about being oblivious to what's going on. I have my own story like that. When I was a kid, we had the woods behind my house had been logged about 100 years before. So all of the big pines were gone, but all the wood since then had 100 years to grow. So they're pretty big trees anyway. The only thing you're missing was the giant white pines that used to be there. So some of those old logging roads were still there, and people would use them during the winter for snowmobile trails. And we had ATVs. We had 2 3-wheel ATVs, the early ones, choppers, man, 3-wheel ATVs. So of course, since we had those, then we were taking advantage of the snowmobile trails, the ones that did just go across a bog where you would sink out of sight and disappear forever, because there's plenty of those. This is Minnesota, but some of the trails, parts, sections of them, especially the ones that have been used for logging, there was actual ground underneath them, so you could use them for ATVs and stuff.
Okay.
And one of my favorite spots was about a mile back behind the house. There's this big canyon, and you go zipping down the side of it, and you turn to your left, and you go along the side of it, and then you go down to the base of it, and there's like a little stream there. You splash through that, and then you got kind of a straightaway going diagonally across it up the other side. And either on the way down or on the way up, you're talking several hundred yards. So I would wrap it down as fast as I could going down it, gain speed, splash the little puddle at the bottom, and then stomp on it again, going back up the far side, so I could go as fast as I could to get back up to the top again. Several times in the course of going up there as fast as I could, and keeping in mind this is like a logging road, so it's wide enough you're not hitting trees on each side of you. You've got a little bit of room, so you don't have to pay that close attention. So even when you're going at top speed, you can turn and look a little bit, which I was doing because I kept hearing this flop, 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 flop sound. And I was thinking, one of my tires is going flat. What the hell? So I'm turning and I'm looking. Neither one of my tires is going flat. So as soon as I get to the top, I stop. And of course, the sound stops. And I'm looking around. There's nothing there. And the tires aren't going flat. And there's nothing dragging in the undercarriage on it or anything. And I'm like, what in the hell is making that noise? Now, this must have happened at least half a dozen times that I can think of, because it happened several times. And I never put 2 and 2 together and went, there's one of them waiting for me to go up the hill, and he's going to race up the hill behind me. That flop, 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 flop was his feet on that frickin' logging trail behind me as he was chasing me up the logging trail. And then when I get to the top, he would just jump off the trail, and I wouldn't see him.
That's why there's a lot of people that say when you're out, film backwards.
Yeah, no kidding. I can only imagine how scary that would have been. There's a Sasquatch cruising up the trail behind you, just, because like I was going fast. I was going as fast as one of those things could go uphill. And then I'm hearing this flop, 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 flop. And I never heard that anywhere else. It was just in that one section of trail, happened several times. And those things are so loud. And with that canyon there, they could probably hear me coming from a mile away and went, oh, I'm going to get into position and race him up the hill again, when he goes cruising up there.
Oh, so
well, this not very far from there. I was rabbit hunting out there by myself with a 22, and it was like noon, and I hadn't had any luck. So I sat down in this grove of pine trees, and I put my back to one of them, and I pulled out my little sandwich, and I'm eating my sandwich in this beautiful little open clearing, and little butterflies flying around, and all bright and sunny and everything. Plop, something hits me, and I'm like, acorns. What the hell? So I just don't think about it, and I go back to eating my sandwich. Whack, this other acorn hits me, and I'm like, there's squirrels dropping frickin' acorns on me. Go away, stupid squirrel. I'm trying to eat my sandwich. Then the third one I see actually comes from over there. Something threw it, and it bounces off my shoulder. And I'm like, okay, that's peculiar. I didn't know squirrels could throw acorns. And again, Mr. Oblivious, I didn't think about it until afterwards. I'm sitting in a grove of pine trees. There's no acorns in a grove of pine trees. Something throwing acorns at me. Hey, stupid. Boink.
Hey. Look over here.
Yeah, good thing I didn't. So anyway, let's actually let everybody know, since you're like all famous and stuff because you did the Iron Dogger race. Why don't you tell everybody what that was like?
No. Well, back in 2001 was the year that Missy and I ran the Iron Dog, and we became, at that point, the first and only women's team to have completed the Iron Dog. And we remained the only women's team until last year.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So
so
had there been many women's teams before that had tried to make the race and had
before yeah, there's been 6 other attempts for that. And so Missy and I were the only ones that had finished. And so one of the women that had ran last year, that was her 3rd attempt. So she had tried a couple other times with a different partner. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. So for over 20 years, Missy and I had been the only women's team to have actually finished it. And so it was back then a lot of different equipment, a lot of different sleds. They certainly didn't have quite the same suspension that they do now.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I can only imagine. I was riding the ones back in the 70s and the 80s, and it was like, what's a suspension?
Yeah, no. And what was snow machine gear, Levi's and Carhartts if you were lucky.
Carhartt, ooh, millionaire. Get
Right?
fancy Carhartt on.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. And so it was really awesome. It was difficult because it took a lot of training. And while I was training for the Iron Dog, my original race partner and I split up. And so I had to find another female that could do the Iron Dog in less than 3 months before flag drop.
Good thing
And
you were in Alaska, or it would have been impossible.
Yeah, and even still, it's like to find another woman that was ready to go.
Oh God.
At that point, it was,
really
I
tough.
was just sitting there almost in tears, and this was like Thanksgiving weekend, and I am just like ready to just bawl, and I'm refusing to give up hope, though, and everybody's asking me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because that was the weekend she had, it was like, show up for training, and if you don't, I'll know you don't want to do this. And she didn't show up. So it was like, okay, all right, well, she's not here. And so everybody was like, are you really, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was sitting there pretty upset, and I could hear some sleds pull up, and here comes Missy and her husband walking through. She's like, I seen your sled out there. I wanted to come in and see what you're doing. She's like, where's your partner? And I was like, I got a question for you. She looks at me and I go, you want to do the Iron Dog with me? And her husband was just like the look on his face was just, because it was a race he had always wanted to do himself, and
Right.
And she just kind of looked at me like excited, and she's like, well, are you sure? I'm like, yep. And
So is he like shoving her forward, slightly?
Like, let's go, time to go, And so she's like, well, let me think about it, and they left, and everybody was like, that's perfect. She's perfect. And Missy, at that time, she was head of a snow machine race organization.
Good God.
And she was putting in the miles out, and racing and doing all of the cross country racing and stuff like that. So she was actually doing training unknowingly. So it was like, she was ready. She had the miles on, because you need about 2,000 miles under your belt prior to doing the race, that year, like the same year you're running the race. You need to have completed 2,000 miles. So you've got, familiarity with.
Probably more than that. Otherwise, your body will just break down, even if your sled doesn't.
Yeah. So it's, it's important to get that kind of mileage in, and she had it. And so, after it was like the beginning of December when she got back to me, and she's like, okay, we'll do it. I'll do it. It was like, yes. I was like, okay, it's going to be really hardcore training from here on out, but let's do it. And so we would meet before work, because I worked, And so I'd meet her before work and we'd go and put on miles, out training. And then I'd come back, shower, and go into work, and then come back and we'd go put on some more miles. And then we'd be in the garage just wrenching away. And, we put,
If you weren't riding the sled, you're fixing it.
yep. And I am telling you, the amount of hours that we just, slammed through it, obviously was worth it because we got to the finish line.
Yay.
Yeah.
So you didn't get eaten by grizzlies. You didn't get a
No.
boulder thrown at you by a Bigfoot. You didn't get captured or grabbed by krakens when you were going across open water.
No, I mean, we did have to go across open water. That was, Norton Bay was open.
So, like, this is another thing with the weather being variable. It's a crapshoot.
Yep.
Theoretically, Norton Bay will be frozen, but maybe not.
Right.
But the course goes across it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not frozen, then what happens?
Well, if it's not frozen, they do have an overland mail route that they can take. It's a bit longer and, windier trail, but that is an alternative route.
Right.
That is available. And they've used it before. So they had to use that last year.
Alternative to what?
Going across the bay. Yeah.
Which is how far?
Well, it's like at least 10 miles in some sections, and but that 10 miles isn't, like you're looking right about here. I don't know if you can see that on there.
I think
and a lot of times there'll be 4 foot of overflow on top of the ice. So, it seems like it's open water, but it's not. But it's still deep water. You don't want to stop.
It is open water for only 10 miles.
Yeah. Like the one year that I was race marshal for the race, we had a brother team. There's 2 brothers, because for the pro class you have to run in teams of 2, and for the expedition class you can have up to, well, they keep changing it each year, but before you used to be able to have as many people you wanted, but the pro class, 2 only. And so this brother team that went out, they took what is called a rabbit in Iron Dog terms, and that's where you get a local to show you like the shortcuts through this areas. There are designated sections of the trail that you have to take, but there are other sections where if you can get from point A to point B in a shorter distance, then go for it. And that's where like locals to certain areas will have all of those little routes, so there's all these real cool little features to the race that makes the race so much fun.
Hey, racer, I sell you this secret map.
Right. So got this rabbit and he took him out. And the key to this is this rabbit had been used by 3 other racers. So keep that in mind. So these guys went out and they said that they had followed the rabbit, and the rabbit told them, take this route that way. And, they said that they followed his instructions, but they ended up out on the water, and the water was open. And so you weren't allowed on the water at that point. And he hit that water. The first brother hit the water and sunk his sled. Like the sled went down. And he was in the water swimming, and here comes his brother up behind him, and he could kind of see that the sled disappeared, and just their timing. And I really believe that this was because they were brothers that this was able to happen. But that other brother came down and was able to just swoop past his brother just enough that the brother reached up and grabbed the tail bar on the sled and was able to pull his brother back out. So he came through and made a big hard turn, and that's not easy to do on open water on a snow machine. It really isn't.
That's
like
incredibly hard to do.
It is a difficult, like the move that this took was impressive on all accounts. And we had the Iron Dog have different GPS on all the sleds. They all have the same kind of GPS, but you could see that thing pinging as it went down out the bay, 900 feet underwater. Just it was the creepiest thing.
Baby kraken playing with it at the bottom of the bay.
Look at me go! Yeah.
Look, Dad, I got a sled.
I'm an iron dogger.
I'm gonna run the iron dog race someday when I get to be a big kraken.
Yeah, so that's where my name comes from, is Iron Dogger. It's like a title that they give you once you've completed the race.
So you and Missy were the first two women to ever complete the race, and the only
Yes.
other pair is very recently. So you're one
As
of
a
only
women's
4.
team.
Yeah.
So we were the first women's team to complete the
Right.
race. So there had been other women that have finished with men, but we were the first women's
Women's
team.
team.
Yes.
So there's only been 2 women's teams that have done it.
Right.
So
Last
you're
year.
one of 4 ever.
Right.
One of the first 2 ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. Like,
Girl power.
Yay! Yeah, when Missy and I came up to, there were so many open rivers, wide gaping open, and we come up to one and it was moving so fast. And I remember just my gut just sinking coming up on it. Just really, it was like no matter how much you train for things, still when you come up on certain situations, it will just render you kind of like, oh my gosh, but this is what I trained for kind of situation.
Yeah.
But it still will make your heart skip a beat. And so we jumped off our sleds and we were kind of looking at where to go punch in, because with the river moving that fast and on a snow machine, it's going to catch your sled and your track and kind of shift you.
Right.
So even
no
if
matter
you
how
punch
fast
in,
you go, you're not going to go directly across the river.
yeah, you're not going to go straight across. And so we were kind of like trying to determine where we're going to punch in, because we had to get across right there because nowhere else. It was all heavily wooded in the other area. So you've got this little section of trail that,
Oh God.
it's like, okay, so in order to make sure you get there, we have to go in. And so we just kept throwing chunks of snow, ice into the river to watch it, see how fast it was moving. And we're like, okay, no, we got to go in, like, okay, we want to probably be in further over here. Yeah. And so as we were, doing all that, it was like, okay, that's unnerving. And then you look across the river and there's a 4-foot lip of ice.
Oh God. So if you don't hit that little ramp on the far side, you are screwed.
And there's no ramp. There's no ramp. Like, it is just the riverside. Like, but like you've got a trail that's like the wood, because they've got Iditarodders and the villagers that use these trail system, and that's it.
Right.
But they're just ski tip
clearing with no trees is what I'm saying.
Like the rest of it is all trees. Like, you're not going to get up and then kind of weave your way through. Like, you got to make that trail opening or you're not getting on. You're swimming. And so, I mean, there's been a lot of people that's where the race ends for them, right there at that particular crossing. And so, it was really hair raising. And Missy and I are looking at that lip across the way going, oh my gosh. Because, your sled's 6 foot. So that's most of the distance of your sled, So the idea is now, not only are we dealing with the swift water that's going to carry us this way, now you've got to punch your sled up and have your skis so far up that they're going to grab over that lip. You can't let them bump into that lip at any point. Like, if they dart into that,
you're bounce off.
You're back in the water and you're done. You're done. You don't get a second chance. So, it's moments like that make the Iron Dog what the Iron Dog is. And
I'm guessing you made it.
Yeah, obviously we made it, but like, that was the thing, was watching that. And then you just, okay, we got it. We figured out where our entry point was and we hit it. And as we came across, you punch your sled and just go back with all of your weight, and just lean that thing as far back and just pitch it up and get those skis up over that lift, and then just give it all you got and make sure that track gets into the grip and gives you some lift over it. And yeah, it's pretty intense.
Holy crap, you wouldn't even need coffee after that. So going back to that bay that's 10 miles across, did you guys go around it?
No, we went through it. So Missy and I,
So you were 10
Yeah.
miles across open
Yeah,
water.
because where it was you could either take the overland trail or not. The year that we had run, it was like either or. And so when Missy and I had went across, there were a few teams that had gone across, and we're like, okay, it's good. So we went across, and as we were going across, it was like, what is that? This is loose. Like, this is really loose snow. And I'm looking, it's like, no, no, no. That's not loose snow, and you're looking around and the snow is waves.
Yeah. You're on water.
You're on water.
This snow sure is wavy.
It's kind of loose.
Yeah. You know what's causing the waves? The kraken that was trying to catch you.
Yeah, it's pretty hairball.
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah,
never
and
ride
then,
your sleds across open ocean.
But it's not like that, like the whole entire way. We got to a section where another team was on the ice and they had broken down, and I'd given them, I had a lot of water. So I had given them my water, one of my water bottles, and they were so thankful, because
Yeah.
that's not like what you have on your sled is what you have.
Yeah.
You go to checkpoint and you can refill your water. You can get, more snacks and things like that if you're lucky. But most part, what is on your sled is what you've got, so you're not really wanting to give up those supplies. But if I hadn't given them, they would have been stuck out on that ice cracking. And, we had just,
They would have been floating away out
we
into
just
the Arctic
floated
Ocean
there.
on an
So
ice
it's like, yeah, no. Yeah. So
somebody want to go pick those racers up? They're somewhere out in the Arctic Ocean. We got their GPS coordinates. They just called and said there's some polar bears heading in their direction.
yeah, luckily they aren't down that far. The year we were running, though, was the year that one polar bear was almost to Nome.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'll let them stay up there and eat the gnomes. You got to stay away from where the race is going on. Yeah. So, was there any other really memorable moments from the race?
I had this one is crazy. There's a section called the Buffalo Tunnels, and it's, it's really tight, and it's basically just enough for the muskox and stuff to get through, and so as I was going through there, I had peel lights on our helmets. That way we weren't just dependent upon our snowmobile headlights.
Right.
So we could look away and see with those really nice bright lights. And plus you could do it with hands-free without a flashlight. We had all of this stuff, but that peel light was really helpful. And so as we were going through it, I looked over off the trail, and there were these gigantic eyeballs. Gigantic. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen muskox eyeballs, but they are huge. They're big. And there's a row of them. And it was like, okay, I'm not. Oh, look at.
They're all looking at you guys. You're cruising past.
I'm not looking off the trail ever again.
Jeez.
That kind of eye shine, and that, it's like, oh, okay, nope.
Yeah, creepy.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I've seen eye shine out. Oh, yeah. Eye shine out in the woods with eyes that are about as big around as a Coke can.
I think the coolest experience happened, and this was all like, that race was really just a major point in my life. But I was a big fan of Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
there was a manatee in Florida that was named after him because they had been in just as many boat wrecks as he had been in car crashes.
Oh my gosh, poor thing.
She was a sweetheart. She had two really cute kids with her. We fed her some lettuce when we seen her.
Aw, cute.
Earnhardt. There's these people that have this dock connected to the river that she lives in that, like, they have her trained to be there at a certain time of day, and they give her a whole bunch of veggies to eat. And so we just pulled up with our, pontoon boat because we knew about what time she was supposed to be there. Sure enough, here she comes with her 2 7-foot long kids, grabs a bunch of
Aw,
munchies, rolls over on her back, like, meow, meow, meow. And then
cute.
my brother's like, yeah, she's been as many boat wrecks as Earnhardt's been in car wrecks. That's what they call her, Earnhardt. You know, she's got these little
Oh,
scars on her where boats hit her.
poor baby. Well, the start of the Iron Dog was the day Earnhardt died,
Oh,
and no one wanted to tell me. So as
yeah.
we were starting the race, that had gone on, and so it was like, don't tell Jackie, do not let her know. And so I had no idea, and we had gotten to Nikolai, one of the checkpoints over here, and once we had gotten to Nikolai.
Can you just adjust your camera a little bit so we can see up a little further? We can't quite see. Yeah, there we go. Now we can kind of, because now that we're talking about the race, I want to see that map.
Yeah,
That's a whole lot of driving around.
yeah, and I need a little teacher pointer, but the Kotzebue Loop is up further over here. That goes, again, more water crossing.
Oh God. Well,
Because they just don't have enough.
The spot up there to the side of where the big G on Iron Dog is, that's the bay you guys are going across.
Yeah, right over here.
Okay.
So
yeah, that just looks like a great place to snowmobile in the middle of a freaking open bay in the ocean. Sure.
Good times had by all.
That survived.
Yeah. So Missy and I, we had gotten right here to Nikolai, and I had one of the checkers came out, and he had a number 3 hat on, and I had forgotten my Dale Earnhardt hat, and I was
okay,
like,
adjust
dude.
back down again. We can't see you now. We can just see the map. All we can see is your eyes.
Oops.
Okay, there you go.
I was like, give me your hat. I'll take it, I'll take it to Fairbanks with me. And he was like, this hat is never leaving my head again. And the way that he said it was just so like, dude, settle down. Like, I'm not trying to steal it. Like
Gollum
just...
on Lord of the Rings. The precious,
Yeah.
my hat now.
Absolutely. It was just weird. And I mean, I'm looking at him, and I could see in the, like, out of the corner of my eye, my partner's like doing like these motions.
You go, yeah, what's with the sign language? Something weird going on here.
Here's oblivious me looking this way. And meanwhile, my partner's like trying to tell him, do not say anything. Don't tell her. Like, do not tell her. And so he's looking at me, and he's obviously seeing Missy over there, like practically doing jumping jacks. And he goes, you haven't heard? I'm like, heard what? No, I haven't heard what I'm racing. And he's like, oh, Dale Earnhardt died. It was like someone took a bat and just slammed me in the chest. I just kind of went back and was just stunned, completely stunned, absolutely stunned. And I was like, don't. And he's like, I'm not kidding. And I could tell by the look on it, he was not kidding. And I was just blown away. And Missy, she's amazing. She used to date my brother, so this is why we were so close. Okay. Yeah. She whaps the backside of my helmet. She's like, pull rope, we're going. It's like, oh, right, we're racing. Right. That's what we're doing.
What you should have just said is, we got to win this one for Earnhardt.
And so like during that time afterwards, I was just crying, like just sobbing. I couldn't even and I was sitting there contemplating, like, because I was thinking, if Dale Earnhardt could die racing, what the hell are you doing out here?
You're winning one for Earnhardt.
This is before we cross water, like the big waters. We're still on mainland, and it was like, what are you doing out here? And I just remember and just thinking all that, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And I was just having that kind of moment where you're doubting yourself and what you've done and what's happening in life. And I could see this snow dust up ahead, and I was like, oh oh, and I go, oh, it's another racer, you know, whew, I'm going to pass someone. And, and it's like, wait, I don't see a tail light. It's like, oh, their tail light's out. Oh, good. We pass them. They're going to have to stay at the checkpoint because you can't go through a checkpoint without tail lights. So it's like, oh, if I pass them, we're going to get more speed on this team, you know, and that's the idea, is to keep passing teams and make them around. And so I got really excited. And so as I'm coming up on this snow dust, you know, and I'm like, there's no, like, I'm not seeing anybody with it, you know, and then I kind of noticed it was a wolf. It was a lone wolf, just hauling ass down this trail, just hauling ass. And I was just, it was one of those moments where it's just so surreal. And I just come up on that wolf and it never stopped. Like, it was running right with me and I was keeping pace with this wolf. And I was just, it was one of those moments where I'm like, I can't believe I'm having, like, this is really freaking happening.
Like, you could
right
basically
now.
reach out and touch them practically.
And I did. I went to go do that. And as I did that, you know, I like kind of slowed back and that wolf just beelined, like it went to go in front of my sled. And I just grabbed as much brake as I could, you know, and I thought, oh shit, I hit this wolf. And so I stopped, you know, and the wolf kind of, and it sits over on the little bank right there. And it's sitting on the bank looking at me. And I am just like, oh, you're not dead good. You know, of course, I'm like, oh, but I'm just having this moment, you know, and Missy pulls up and I'm like, did you see that? Did you see that?
She's like, hey, I almost got your hand bit off. What the hell are you thinking?
Yeah, so that was one of those moments out there where it was like, oh, yeah. Had many moments out there, but yeah, it's awesome. Love that race.
Wow, that sounds like,
yeah, I even wrote Dale Earnhardt's family and told him that story, you know, because it was just the timing of finding out about Dale and then seeing that lone wolf out on the trail. It was like, oh, that was Dale Earnhardt came to tell me to keep going.
Yeah. And be careful of that river crossing.
Yeah.
So let's see, how long did it take you to go from the beginning of the race to the end of the race?
At that time, it was done in 5 days.
So you had 5 days. Well, what is it now? Like a week or something?
It's done in a week. Yeah.
Okay. That's still.
They've added a lot more miles on it, and you know, so they when Missy and I did it, the rules were a lot different too. So when Missy and I did it, the first pro class team into Nome, which is the halfway point for the race, it's the finish line for the expedition class, but it's the halfway point for the pro class. And I just completely lost what I was saying, Duke.
Well, how many days it takes in 7
Oh,
days?
okay. So when Missy and I ran back then, the racers would get 40 hours after the first pro class team came into Nome. So you'd have that. So the first pro class team that would come into Nome, you'd get 40 hours. And that was it. If you didn't make it to Nome within that 40-hour time frame, you were disqualified automatically. And that was to prevent racers from going back and forth on the same trail.
Okay.
They didn't want racers going the same direction, you know, opposite directions on the same trail.
Right. Because nifty head-on crashes at night and stuff, that would be epic.
I lost a friend that way.
That would be epically bad.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Well, especially nowadays, snowmobiles go so freaking fast if you're going across open ground or something.
Yeah.
It's like being on a bullet when you hit something.
Yeah, and if you're coming around blind corners and things like that, a lot can happen.
Yow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
I can. Yeah, and there's not a whole lot of protection in a sled or something when you crash into something. Not a lot of safety gear there.
No, not at all. It's not like there's airbags
No,
or seatbelts.
no, or roll bars or any kind of a cage around you, or just as safe as a snowmobile or a motorcycle, pretty much. Which is to say, no safety whatsoever. Best of luck. Oh my Lord. Wow, so that must have really been quite the experience. I'd never been involved in any kind of a major athletic event or anything like that. You know, if you didn't already, and forgive me if you did, are you going to write a book about your experiences?
I've thought about it. I've gone back and forth. I've now started trying to cover more of the Iron Dog event on my channel. So I'll be doing, as it's gearing up right now because they've just did their sign up for this year's race in February, coming up in February. And so I'll be doing a lot more with that. But as far as writing, I don't know. I figured I'll do a lot of telling the stories online, but I don't know. At one point I really wanted to, but I don't know.
I would think that that would be worth documenting because, you know, you're the first all-female team that ever completed the race. So that's a part of history right there. And as the race changes and evolves, it'll be more and more interesting people in the future to look back and go, hey, remember when those women actually managed to survive that race that one time, a long time ago, when the gear sucked? And we can't even believe anybody managed to survive that race?
Yeah, like in 1984 when they started it, it started as a bar bet.
Oh,
You know,
God, that sounds
they're
about
like,
right.
"Do you think we could race snow machines on the Iditarod Trail?" And they're like, "Well, I'll bet you. Let's do it." And that's
Sure, why
pretty
not?
much how it started. And Yamaha got all interested, and it became a thing. But yeah, that's pretty much where the idea came from. And back in '84, you think about the sleds back then and the gear, they were running in Levi's and,
Yeah.
and Carhartts and yeah.
I
It
know.
was,
I was, riding the snowmobiles around in the late 70s when they were even worse, and the equipment sucked even worse.
yeah.
And I remember very vividly going out for a snowmobile ride, a very ill-advised one, when it was 32 below and windy. And, with the great gear we had on then, I had a stocking cap. So I got about 5 miles out there and I went, well, my face is freezing solid. This was a bad idea. I
My
need to go
brain
back
hurts.
to the house. Yeah, exactly. I have like the worst ice cream headache ever. So I turn around as I'm going back. There's this one little bridge you got to go across. And as I'm going across it, extra strong gust of wind hits me, blows my head off into the river. And I'm like, well, fuck.
Brr.
I still got 3 more miles to go at about 32 below with a wind
Oh,
chill on top of it and no freaking hat. I had to like
oh,
literally stop about every half a mile and put my hands over my ears
yeah.
to get them to
Uh-huh.
thaw out so they would freeze solid and
Oh,
wait for a while until they would and then take
oh,
off again and then repeat process.
oh, and then tuck in like trying to use your shoulders as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. No, it just hurt. The wind it just hurt.
Oh, oh,
Because 32 below ambient plus wind, plus you're
hmm.
on a sled. Well, do you want to drive really slow and take longer out in the cold and the wind? Or do you want to drive faster and have even more wind chill and it's colder?
Right, right. Like you start going off the wind chill chart at a certain point.
Yeah, pretty much. That was just, I'm still amazed to this day that I made it back home and did not freeze either of my ears off. Because
Yeah.
by all rights, I should have.
Oh,
If I wasn't so used to already being frozen from having grown up there. Any normal
yeah.
human, yeah, both their ears would have been frozen off. Probably part
Yeah.
of their face. It would have been all diatlov pass, with no eyes or
Ah,
tongue or anything. Out there in a snowbank somewhere.
I have seen some horrible frostbite. There's one year. I hope this isn't too gross for your viewers, but
Okay, one last gross story for the end of the show.
okay. An iron dogger because we used to use duct tape to keep our face from getting frostbite
Right.
back then. Now they've got different like moleskin and different stuff that they use, but we used duct tape back then. Well, he went to go peel his duct tape off and he peeled his like skin off. It was so frostbit under there. It was meat that peeled back. It was disturbing.
Ew.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he was mad that he was told that he could no longer continue.
Well, I can see that. I mean, at that point, you're already screwed. So what the hell? You might as well let him finish. You know.
Oh, well, oh, come on now. Come on
He's gonna come out of
now.
it, with bandages around him, looking like the mummy the rest of his life. You might as well
Yeah,
win the
no.
race.
No. That's still, they had over 1,000 miles to go. So no.
Only 1,000, and they made him quit. Jeez, what a bunch of quitters. Yeah.
He definitely thanked us after, it all set in and he went to the doctor and realized just how bad it was.
Oh gosh, a bunch of my face fell off.
Yeah.
That's kind of a problem.
It's
Yeah,
gonna
no
leave a
kidding.
mark.
Oh, that'll leave a mark. Yeah, exactly. Froze part of your face off.
Yeah.
Oh, I know the other thing I like to watch is I don't actually do any of it, but of course I live in an area where it's doable. Mountaineering. And in the spring, when they're doing all the assaults on various giant mountains over in the Himalayas, I like to watch what they're up to over there because nowadays they're doing like live streams. You're getting like real time feed of what they're doing there, so it's really exciting. And unfortunately, it's incredibly dangerous. So you do get members and or entire teams getting killed sometimes, and you'll be getting a report from like the night before, and the next day it'll be like, oh, there's a report from base camp. Those guys up there disappeared.
Oh,
And that's it. Sometimes they never even find them.
wow.
Blown
That's
off the mountain,
crazy.
they don't freaking know, just like gone. No, it was 100-mile-an-hour winds up there last night and 20 below. We hope they found an ice cave. They never hear from them again. God.
Oh,
Can you imagine
intense.
clinging to the side of a vertical mountain?
No.
No, it's 100-mile-an-hour winds and 20 below. You'll be fine.
No, I can't. I have a friend who climbed Denali, and he climbed Denali up and over. No.
That's cool.
No.
Yeah.
I won't be doing that.
Denali's actually pretty much the tallest mountain on Earth because Everest goes much higher into the sky, but Everest base is on an 18,000-foot plateau. Denali's base is pretty close to sea level. And if you put an outline of both those mountains next to each other, Denali's like 3 times the size. It's this gigantic thing, and Everest is a little pimple next to it. The only reason Everest is the tallest mountain because it's sitting on a massive plateau. The base of it's at 19,000 feet.
Yeah, that's one of many arguments. Also, I think, like out of the 21 biggest peaks in North America, 18 of them are in Alaska, I believe.
Yeah, Alaska's got most of the giant mountains. And, Montana's got a bunch of them too, because people are always like, oh, there's big mountains in Colorado. Again, Colorado is sitting on a plateau. Montana isn't. There's one piece of western Montana is 600 feet above sea level. Right next to me, there's a mountain that's 10,000 feet. See what I'm saying? That's taller than Everest right there.
That's a mountain.
Yeah, that's an actual mountain. You got. I just figure if you got over a mile of vertical from the base of the mountain, then it's a mountain.
Yeah. We went out to, I don't know if you've heard about that Oregon giant stone door down here.
Right up there. That thing was open. It opened completely up, and then it closed back up. And there's a little slot in it right up there. You can see that little slot where it looked like somebody was staring out of. Dude, giants are freaking real. I don't care what anybody says.
Anyway, we just been staying kind of low key. When I wake up in the morning and I'm going, this is what I run into. It's down the road, and then sometimes it's up the other side of the road, and sometimes it just follows me around town, and there's a white truck that does the same thing.
White trucks, no license plate. There's no way I'm getting down there without a rope or anything. This is just steep beyond steep. I'm right here. We got to go down there, cross through there, and it is narrow and it's slick. This was slick. I don't know what that was. It's that same big flood, but I swear to God, there was something standing right there. Go. Just get going. I don't know what, but just get going.
Anybody that knows us knows my wife is very black and white, and if you listen carefully, you can hear what she says, and you can see her crying. So, on our way back down, something happened, and we ended up running. Anybody that knows me knows that my old butt don't run. Anyways, will I go back? No. Will I take somebody else up there? Nope. I can tell everybody where it's at. If you DM me, I don't. That's about it. I know what I think it is, but it's 60 to 80 feet tall, 60, 80 feet across at a wedge shape.
We went down there and checked it out. And I don't think anybody's going to be able to get up to that thing without being a professional mountaineering with ropes and
No.
stuff.
Well, in some of those situations, it's easier to go to the top and rappel down than it is to climb up to it.
Yeah, and that's how if someone was going to do that, that's what it would take. And with all the moss and everything, you'd really want to wait for a really dry summer day to try and even pull that off. But yeah, so I don't think anybody's going to get up there anytime soon.
No, if you got that kind of a wet, dank, moss, uncertain footholds, handholds, that whole sort of thing, the safest way to do it is go to the top by another route and rappel down it. Because then it doesn't matter. You've got an anchor point above you, and you've got your, carabiners and all your equipment. And at any point you run out of rope or whatever, well, you just go back up again because you just climb your own rope right back to the top. You don't have to worry about it. But trying to get to that point just by vertical ascent and putting in pitons and carabiners, that's super dangerous.
Yeah,
especially when you've got uncertain rock or anything like that.
Yeah. So hopefully no one will go hurt themselves trying to make that.
Well, there's easier ways to do it nowadays. We got drones. You just fly your drone right over the entrance.
There you go. Yeah, when we went down there was 2 other cars there, another group of people that were making their way up there. So here it is, tubers and footers. We found it. We found it. Let's take a looky up there, get a good. It is pouring. That is a steep climb. Check out this area. And there it is. Something that I'm kind of noticing straight out the gate is all the moss on that
what would be called a door wouldn't be there if it was sliding, regardless of which direction. So, I am intrigued though, definitely intrigued. So we will be returning to this location. But we are here on 11/11, the portal door opening day of all. So, we'll see.
Weird.
Interesting though. There you go, tubers and footers, another angle. With the misty fog rolling in. There you get somewhat of an idea of the angle of this slope here. And it's getting interesting. Alright, tubers and footers. Hanging out, checking out the area. Hold on, there's a vehicle coming. Alright, tubers and footers. So maybe the door just opens like that. There's a little trail thing down it. Alright, tubers and footers, it is exactly 3 p.m. on 11/11. Some awesomeness to happen. It looks like a little trail, like whoops, coming down out of there. It's pretty impressive looking either way. Definitely coming back with some magical stuffs and offerings and all sorts of things. Joe's gonna bring his hiking gear. We're gonna try and get up there, behind there. Alright, tubers and footers. Well, the Quartz Creekville Road, or the Quartzville Road giant adventure begins. Spot. Tubers and footers, look. Coming in my rearview mirror.
It's getting a lot of attention, so hopefully someone doesn't hurt themselves.
Yeah, hopefully. We hate to see that.
Mhm.
Well, anyway, dear, I think we should let everyone go. We've gone for about an hour and a half now, and I think we've pretty
Yeah.
much covered everything. But
Yeah.
if you ever have any updates and you'd like to come back on the show and let us know what's been happening in your exciting life, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, let everybody know where they can find you.
I am on YouTube. My YouTube channel is called Iron Dogger, and that's pretty much what I've got going on.
And you will see
I'm not
Iron-
on Facebook and stuff that much, only during the race. So
Yeah, I got a group on Facebook, but I'm not on there. Other people run it for me. So
yeah.
So yeah, totally understand that situation. But yep, go check out her channel, sub to her, keep updated on what's going on, and if you're on a lot of paranormal and or Bigfoot shows that have live chat rooms, you're very liable to run into Iron Dogger on them. She's on a lot of the shows, so
Yeah.
say hi to her if you see her in the chat room. The champion. Her and Missy, the champions, the first ones to manage to do it. And that's just like crazy. I used to snowmobile, and I think about those kind of distances, and I'm just like, no. Even when I was a kid, no. Big no. No.
And making them all one right after the other.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. It'd be bad enough doing it in sections, like, oh, let's do this 300-mile ride. I don't know about that. And like, oh, let's do 2,000. Not happening. Nope, you're tougher than me. You got me beat. All right. Well, thanks again for being here on the show. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it. It was fun
thank you,
to have
Duke, for
you.
having me.
Love having the Alaskans on the show. We don't get enough of them. I try and get more all the time because you guys are all super adventure. You've got lots of fun stuff going on up there all the time. What with the gone missing thing being a constant in Alaska. Hey, where's so and so? Oh, he gone missing. Oh, okay, another day in Alaska.
He'll be back.
Yeah, maybe they'll come back. Who knows? Okay, everybody out there, be careful, be safe. Don't go do the Iron Dog race unless you got the training to do it. And as for all the rest of it, you know what the rules are. Follow them, and you won't get abducted by aliens. So make
Night,
sure
everybody.
that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do not hug the Wookiee.